My name is Kayani Vieira, and we are Unit 4. Our unit coach is Mr. Clark, and our classroom teacher is Mr. Clark.
Okay, very good. And we've selected question 2. How appropriate. How and why, and we have a timekeeper back there, okay? How and why has presidential power expanded since the ratification of the Constitution? How have wars, emergencies, and the media contributed to the expansion of presidential powers? How have the other branches of government responded to the expansion of presidential power? Do you think they have done so adequately? Explain. And when you're ready, you may begin.
Prior to President Barack Obama's immigration order, House Speaker John Boehner stated, "The president has said before that he's not a king and he's not an emperor, but he sure is acting like one." While this has been a common theme throughout presidential history, there has been no linear growth of the constitutional powers of the executive. There has been expansion of executive responsibilities. The vesting and take care clauses grant inherent powers, allowing the president to adopt unforeseen responsibilities, calling for responsive and effective actions to situations such as Southern secession, disasters like Hurricane Katrina, or controversial laws over the war on terrorism. The most influential executives embody this responsive energy, taking advantage of opportunities to exercise these responsibilities, often through executive orders. In recent years, these orders that carry quasi-legislative functions have come into major controversies, such as President Obama's recent order on immigration reform. Additionally, the use of signing statements have added to this unilateral expansion of presidential authority, because these statements allow, in many ways, the use of line item veto.
Wars and emergencies create a political or economic environment calling for an efficient and responsive execution by a president, as opposed to be slow, deliberative, or partisan legislators. The framers were aware of this from the Revolutionary War, where under the Articles of Confederation, George Washington's army was consistently slowed down by having to wait for congressional approval and funding for basic military actions. The inefficiency of the Articles made many advocate for a more functional, energetic executive to respond to such situations. President Franklin Roosevelt, when faced with crises like the Great Depression and World War II, was able to issue 3,522 executive orders over his presidency to advance his policies.
Presidents have the ability to respond to emergencies more efficiently than deliberative legislatures, which became especially emphasized during the nuclear age. President Kennedy was able to use his emergency powers to rapidly resolve the Cuban Missile Crisis. This presidential efficiency remains true today with the current Ebola crisis, where President Obama issued an order appointing an Ebola czar to oversee federal coordination in a much more efficient way than Congress could.
Executive use of the media has always been an accessible tool for presidential influence. Theodore Roosevelt's critics deemed this influence the bully pulpit for its power to sway public opinion. The internet, social media, and television have offered new mediums for expanding this presidential privilege. President Obama has capitalized on this through his weekly YouTube chats or interviews with a comedian, such as Zach Galifianakis, to help spread his agenda. The president is able to capitalize on media influence because of his singular position versus the complex congressional system. Congress has been reactionary in response to the expansion of presidential authority when public opinion has been in their favor. On November 21st, the House of Representatives filed a suit against President Obama because they believed he overstepped his power in unilaterally acting to waive deadlines and pay insurance companies under the Affordable Care Act without approval from Congress. The 1973 War Powers Resolution was passed in reaction to the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution, an attempt to regain congressional power as outlined in Article 1, Section 8. However, this resolution has only been enacted twice. Although Congress has more constitutionally enumerated powers than the executive, when they are not actively using them, they may defer many of these responsibilities to the executive.
The Supreme Court's jurisprudence has shown a pattern of oscillation towards the presidential power. During the Korean War, President Truman issued Executive Order Number 10340 in 1952, taking control of the nation's steel mills in order to avoid a strike by the United States steelworkers of America. As a result, Justice Robert Jackson's concurrence from the case of Youngstown Sheet and Tuba Corporation v. Sawyer created red, yellow, and green guidelines for the presidential actions.
Other presidents, such as George W. Bush, have strongly implemented the unitary executive theory, which embodies the opening of Article 2, allowing all of the executive power to be placed in the hands of the president. Specifically, President Bush used this theory to justify the executive's ability over the use of military force, the detention and interrogation of enemy combatants, extraordinary rendition, and intelligence gathering. However, as shown in the 2006 case of Boumediene v. Bush, the court is more likely to closely examine the constitutionality of presidential actions after the public safety has been assured. Thank you.
42. Ouch.
What was it?
442.
But there's,
That's
question.
You had about
like 10
Yes.
from Mary Town.
there was about 10-second delay there, so
Yeah.
we're gonna take 10
Yeah.
seconds off of that, still make it 4:32.
Yeah.
I think you only said.
Okay,
She went to the end.
She did? Okay, that was my fault, sorry.
what president would you select to be a designer of the modern presidency?
In many ways, Franklin Roosevelt was a big contributor to the modern presidential seat. Through his use of executive orders and his ability to issue fireside chats to let the public know what was going on within the country, he embodied the idea of spreading his influence and using his power to issue or respond to the responsibilities that he needed to.
Is that all? Just one president? That's it? He's the only one?
What was your question again?
I said, which president would you select to be a designer of the modern presidency? Which means all three of you should respond with a president. You better pick one. You better, okay, hold it, stop, can you put that on pause? Okay. You need to pick a president, and you need to pick why you think that president has expanded the role of the presidency, okay? And this is not one of these questions where there's only one right answer. So I really, all of you have to pick a president. I mean, seriously, pick a president and then decide why that person. FDR's one, you could go, I mean, you could say Lincoln's one because of what he had to do to keep the Union back to, put together. You could pick Obama. You said in your testimony about all of the stuff he uses on the internet and this and that and the other. Is that an idea of a modern president? Is he bringing the presidency into modern times? Well, there's a perfect example of that. So guys, you gotta make sure you pick one, okay?
Let's rephrase, it's not, there is no wrong answer.
There is no wrong answer.
The only wrong answer is no answer.
Yeah,
I think I was just
exactly.
confused with designer. I don't know why, I was just.
Okay.
Okay, well, really
know,
what
if
you wanna
I-
look at is, okay, so what president do you most respect? And if you could pick that president
Yeah,
and say, okay, I want him to design the presidency, what are the attributes to that? What is it that that person was doing that you would want to have design the presidency today?
Yeah.
Okay, that's all you're asking.
Yeah.
That's all you're doing, is you're saying, I really like this guy,
Yeah, because,
okay? And this is why I'd like him to be designing the presidency today.
so the four of you need to get together and each of you pick a president.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because I will tell you right now, if I'm judging on dress rehearsal, I'm gonna pick question 2, I'm gonna ask you the same question. Trust me on that. Okay, you can start it up again.
Helpful with the
Right.
writing.
Go ahead. You have a question?
No, you have, finish the question.
I believe President Obama would certainly be the best designer of a modern presidency because of the fact that he is so in tune with social media, which is very important in order to reach the younger generation such as ourselves, because oftentimes we are on things like Twitter, and it's so easy to just click follow. Like President Obama, he's tweeting often. I think that's a perfect way to reach the younger generation.
I would choose President Ronald Reagan. I think communication is one of the biggest parts in a presidency. It can expand its potential in many different ways and without actually expanding the power itself, because that's not very possible right now. But President Ronald Reagan was known as the great communicator, and he was able to sway public opinion and sway Congress's opinion many different times, which made him a great designer.
Perfect.
Oh, hard was it?
That was simple.
Okay,
Okay.
explain to us what an executive order is versus an executive agreement?
An executive order can be defined as anything that a president does in order to reinforce a law that has already been set in place.
An executive order is also somewhat implied in Article 2, Section 1, where it is stated that the president or the executive power is vested in the president.
An executive agreement would be where the president is targeting an audience who responds positively, and so that they both have some sort of a compact instead of him making some sort of action where there's response that it goes under judicial review afterwards. So it's an agreement before he makes the executive order.
Okay. Why have recent presidents devoted more time and energy to foreign and military matters than to domestic matters? And do you agree with the allocation of time and attention? Or do you think it should be more balanced? Why or why not?
Recently, or since 2001, with the apparent attack on the United States from terrorist groups, the issue of being attacked by other nations has become much more prevalent, and so presidents have had to address that in order to ensure the safety of the nation, because if the nation isn't safe, it obviously can't function from within if it's being attacked.
Oftentimes, foreign affairs certainly require a lot of attention, such as recently with President Obama and his attention toward ISIS. It was threatening, it was very much threatening toward our nation, and the fact that they were holding hostages and they were executing journalists. It poses a very intense threat that should be addressed.
On a different note, when dealing with foreign affairs, there are a lot of things that we can acquire from other nations that we don't have. Also, there are things that we can fix. So recently, President Obama has reached out to China and tried to go more green with the world, and so has China. That hasn't exactly been approved by Congress, but he has met with through foreign affairs, and that's certainly going to better our atmosphere.
But is he spending too much time, or is the president spending too much time in those areas and should maybe spend more time on domestic issues?
With the president addressing foreign affairs, or just any issue, which could be taken as Ebola, it's a foreign disease in the United States. If he doesn't address that on the international level, then that could later be transmitted in the United States and make a bigger domestic problem. So because of that, I think it's very important for him to address, or just any president to address foreign affairs because of the later relations it can have to domestic affairs.
Is the 22nd Amendment still appropriate?
Do you know what the 22nd Amendment is?
It's a term limit. Yeah, term limit for presidents.
Okay.
It's either yes or no on one. I mean, it's to him also. Oh, sure.
Oh, no, no.
Yeah,
We're not gonna let him off the hook that easy. In other words, yeah, do you think it's still appropriate now as it was back in the 1930s and 40s?
Again, this is an opinion.
Yes.
No wrong answer except for no answer.
So because of partisanship and the ability of presidential terms and the limit on presidential terms to also sway who the president's political affiliation, which can later translate into his ability to, or his or her ability to appoint judges or other members of the executive cabinet. I think that in relation to the United States and our flexibility as a nation, it's needed to make sure that one party isn't taking too much control and there's the ability to have differing views from the executive branch.
think it's very relevant and needed as well. It brings new energy and definitely new ideas and new people to certain positions.
I would agree with Mary Alice. I think it's appropriate to have it set at 4 years, mostly because it's, or 4 years plus another term, if you get reelected, because it does give the president enough time to certainly make an impact. However, things, especially modernly, are always changing, and it's good to have the option to reelect another president.
You know, I'm gonna start, because what did you say at the beginning? Something about emperor, right? The very first statement said about John Boehner, right?
John Boehner said
Said-
President Obama said that he's not an emperor, he's not a king, he's
Okay.
acting like one.
So then we ask you the question about the 22nd Amendment, and that's the answer.
Okay.
And so we don't have an emperor, we don't have a dictator, we don't have somebody that's in power for so long of a period that they end up basically could, not saying they would, but could have enough power to suspend the other branches of government, now couldn't they? And become a dictatorship. That's what happened in Germany, that's what happened in Italy. You know, obviously it was a different time, we were in a depression, this and that and the other, but that could happen. So how relevant is the 22nd Amendment? This
So-
way, it makes a president, now, sure, they could name a successor,
Right.
right? As Teddy Roosevelt did,
That didn't work out too well.
but that didn't work out too well the second go around, and, you know, but still, you know, they name a successor, and you can kind of keep that, but, you know, I mean, yeah, you have the idea that we do have that limitation, and your answer is completely correct, that it brings in new ideas and new directions, things like that, but be decisive. You guys are very hesitant in your answers, like there's a right or wrong answer, and we aren't asking you right or wrong answers. We're asking you your opinion. So have an opinion. That's the main thing. I think that's where, I don't know if you guys just aren't comfortable with this question, or what the thing is, but I know you know it. You guys are good. You guys are good, but you're showing me a lot of, like you're scared. Like you're scared, you know, I mean, let's.
This is definitely a reverse crossing, so I'm pretty sure.
And you know what? And don't be surprised that this is the one you get. Because, you know, you might get a judge, the judges will get together and say, well, you know what? Since you hear all about the president all these days, let's give him question 2. I mean, I don't know, but that's just, it's hard to say. It's, you know, I mean, we can't really tell you that that's what you're gonna get, but, you know, they may not be as up to date on, say, federalism. They may give you the congressional question, but they may not be up on federalism as much to give you that, so you may end up with either question 1 or 2. It's like you guys are very, you know, you're just not sure, you're unsure of yourselves, and you don't have to be, because you guys know this stuff. I mean, as soon as we pressed you on it, you gave me 3 good answers of 3 good presidents, and that's what we wanted to hear. But, you know, it was almost like it was like, I got the deer in the headlights look, guys. I mean, you know, at this point, we shouldn't have that. You should be really comfortable with these questions, okay? Okay.
Just like we talked about, you know, listen to the question carefully, and if it's an opinion question, you can't be wrong.
Mhm.
You cannot be wrong. Now, some judge might be a jerk and want to question why you think it's that way, but you can't be wrong. Can't be, because that's what you're basing it on. Now, as far as backing up things you were saying in cross-ex, you only did one referring to anything to do with the Constitution. You only did one time referring to anybody else. In testimony, you did 5 references to someone else, quotes or something like that. You did 3 references to the Constitution, and you did 1 in reference to law. okay? You can even go into the point where saying, you know, what gives the president the right to do what he does? You know? And I think, you know, once you guys answer it, you have great answers. One thing I would caution you two on is don't rely on so much on her to start.
Right. Yeah, I have, for some reason, a problem with like collecting notes before I speak.
And that's
And I
okay,
try not to just, like,
but there's gotta be something that comes out that you're okay
Yeah.
with it, okay? But when you're, you know, from our standpoint, okay, we'll ask the question and immediately you two, your eyes go that way,
Yeah,
Do we do that?
yes.
okay? And that's not a good thing, okay? Even if she's the one to answer,
Where to start.
keep looking at the judges, okay? They'll see that you're formulating thought, okay? But don't be afraid to jump out there once in a while. Not that you don't have good answers, it's just, I could tell you how the answers were gonna go, because you were in such a sequence. You. Every cross-ex question, that's how it went. Almost every one. I think one time it changed. Okay? So,
There's always somebody, yeah, there's, you know, and I'm sure it might happen with you guys too, but there's usually one person that starts off. And that's not good. And the reason I say that is because my son was the worst for that. And that's what they did. He knew the answers, or he would be the first one to spontaneously answer a question. And everybody, I could see it. I mean, I was watching, his unit did the same thing like you guys do. They just, okay, Tomas, go ahead, start. And then he'd say something and then everybody else would jump in. But then it becomes noticeable. See, the judges will notice that. You know, they won't see, and I mean, you guys really spread out your answers. I mean, it's not like one person
No.
dominated the conversation. You each answered, out of 5 questions, you answered it 5 times, you answered it 4 times each. So you answered all the questions. I mean, you spread it out really well. And if the judge picks up on that and sees that everybody's answering the questions like that, that's great. But if they only know that everybody looks at you and they know you're gonna start, Sophia, that's not necessarily the best thing in the world. So if you guys can, and the only way you do that is by getting everybody together.
Yeah, we've had trouble meeting.
Yeah, that's the problem, trying to get together.
well,
And
and you're
then
gonna have
there's-
problems doing that now from
Yeah.
the time until competition, you know?
Yeah,
Especially getting Wyatt in here.
and there's
Basketball
still,
started,
yeah,
so
and there's still 30 seconds you gotta delete off
It's
of
gonna
that.
be hard to do.
You still got 30 seconds, man. 30 seconds is a lot of time. I know 2 or 3 seconds is one thing, but 30 seconds is a
Well,
lot.
if you can get even 20 on it, you can get into the 4 to 410, they're not gonna shut you down from 4 to 410. You keep rambling, they will. And so you wanna be careful of that, but, you still got a little bit.
Yeah,
You can
still,
stick
I'm
around.
sure there's still something in there.
Now,
How about answering the
Mary
questions?
Alice,
thing?
you had no eye contact.
I didn't.
No,
Oh.
I watched you specifically. You read,
Mhm.
but I didn't see, I kept saying, okay, where's your eyes? Let me see your eyes, let me see. And you need to get some eye contact. You guys did good with your eye contact, okay? And I'm not trying to pick on you, just,
No, yeah,
that's an
I-
observation. I'd just like to see your eyes in your presentation. You know, I think your confidence level's fine. Your answers to cross-ex are great once you
Yeah,
did them.
once you- yeah. I
Okay.
mean, you know, those are good answers.
I sense, and this is just my own perception, that you're so enthralled with this time on this question that it's taking center stage that's causing you discomfort. And, you know, okay, what would be the worst thing that happened if they said, stop? At 4:20, at 4:10, and they said, stop, and you had to stop, what would be the worst thing that happened?
That.
Nothing.
No, because
You
they
just
don't
wouldn't
know-
hear the last
Yeah.
3 lines.
Yeah.
They don't know what you have to say
Okay.
after that.
So is that, that's like
And you
the
know,
end of life?
and in theory, and I mean, this is one of the things too. Here's, I shouldn't say this, because I could get in trouble for saying this, but I'm gonna say it anyway. You know what, I mean, if you're sitting here reading along, and you have that, and you get to and they put up that stop sign, because they'll be sitting right there, and they throw that stop sign up, and you're in the middle of a sentence, you can always go to the end of that sentence and say thank you. There's nothing wrong with that, because the judges don't know how much you have left. They have no idea what you have left, and then it looks like you're at 401. And you go, oh, wow, 401's okay, you know. But if you just kept reading and reading and reading and reading, they will stop you. They will stop you dead. I've seen it happen. So, you know, like I say, if you get there, whoever's reading that, and you still have a problem, you know, as far as cutting out some things, and you see that stop sign go up, just get to the end of the sentence and say thank you.
Who's last? You're, just be prepared to know
Yeah.
that if someone cuts you off, okay, get to the end of the sentence and say thank you. Don't get flustered by it.
Yeah.
Just know, okay, here's my procedure, I just get to here, and we're done. Okay?
Because the worst they can say is, well, maybe you didn't totally answer that very last part of the question. That's the only thing they can really say.
I think you've probably pretty much done it.
But I think you've done it,
Okay,
yeah. I
But
think you've
just understand that it can happen, so that you don't get yourself worried about it,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah, and the
Try and
end
get
is
to
just-
as close as you can, but if you can't, and then somebody cuts you off, so what? Then the key thing is that you respectfully say thank you, close it all up, take a deep breath, and get ready for cross-ex. Okay, and the only thing that I would suggest in cross-ex is just open your ears, and I don't mean that derogatorily, I mean just take a deep breath, sit back, and say, okay, I want to hear the question. And just listen to the question, and if it's, what do you think, then know all of you need to answer. And like I said, there's no wrong answer when they say, what do you think? Okay, in my opinion, there's no wrong answer in there anyway, but it's just trying to show them how much you know about it. Now, let me share, did I share with you the law and all that good stuff?
Yes, you
Yeah.
did.
Okay. Yeah,
Okay.
if you have more case law, you can go ahead. Outside that, just remind it, you guys are fine.
I don't think it's actually recording. I think it's okay.